Sumerius Fane here, your fuzzy guide to the unknown, and today we're going to look at an aspect of Lovecraft's childhood pictures that might seem a little odd to modern folks. Some 70 pictures exist of H.P. Lovecraft, and most of them he's looking quite dour, making the faux pas of wearing Victorian fashion in the 20th century. But then we get back to his baby and toddler photos, and behold, the father of modern horror sitting in a beautiful dress, flaunting the loveliest locks this side of the reeking wharfs of Innsmouth. So, what exactly is going on here? Was Lovecraft predicting the coming gender revolution and getting an early start? Not exactly. To answer the question, we'll need to pick at the mind of Lovecraft's mother, Sarah Susan Phillips, and also set up a historical context. Lovecraft's mother, Sarah, was ready for him when he was born on August 20th, 1890. At that time, she was quite well off due to the riches of her land-owning grandfather, Whipple Van Buren Phillips. She had recently married the soon-to-be father, Winfield Scott Lovecraft, who was a traveling salesman and former blacksmith. Winfield's job had him frequently out of the house, and he would descend into full-blown madness 3 years after Lovecraft's birth. Once mad, Lovecraft's father was effectively removed from his life, as he had to spend the rest of his years in the Butler Hospital mental institution, suffering from what appeared to be the symptoms of syphilis. Lovecraft's mother, Sarah, would eventually find herself in Butler Hospital as well, suffering from her own strain of madness, but that's in the future. In 1890, Sarah was pregnant, bored, and excited about her child. She was bored because she was frequently left alone since her husband had to frequently travel for work. Sarah focused her energy on mooning over the child she was about to bring to the world. She was quite ready for H.P. Lovecraft's birth and had even acquired a hope chest, which she began to fill with garments and knickknacks for the somber little boy-to-be. However, Sarah wasn't stocking the chest with boy clothes. No, she was hoping for a girl, as evidenced by this passage from the 1948 memoir of Lovecraft's future wife, Sonia Green. It was, at that time, the fashion for mothers to start hope chests for their daughters even before they were born, so that when Mrs. Winfield Scott Lovecraft was expecting her first child, she hoped it would be a girl. Although Sarah wanted a girl, she didn't push the entire contents of the hope chest on little Howard, but continued to add to it in hopes that it would be passed to his future wife. Sonia continues, "Nor was the hope chest curtailed at the birth of her boy, so this hope chest was gradually growing, someday to be given to Howard's wife." Nonetheless, Sarah couldn't help herself when it came to prettying up the future father of all things eldritch and unnameable. She delighted in styling his hair into golden tresses. In fact, she had prompted little Howard to tell people proudly, "I am a little girl." Lovecraft remained in his dresses and curls until around the age of 6, when his blossoming sense of gender norms caused him to demand his locks be cut, an act which drove his doting mother to tears. Lovecraft's wife Sonia relates this too in her memoirs. As a baby, Howard looked like a beautiful little girl. He had, at the tender age of 3 years, a head of flaxen curls, which any girl would have been proud. These he wore until he was about 6. When at last he protested and wanted them cut off, his mother had taken him to the barber shop and cried bitterly as the cruel shears separated them from his head. Howard Lovecraft had spent the first bit of his life looking no different than a girl of his age. But would Lovecraft have been mocked for this as a child? There's certainly no record of anyone ridiculing him at this age, and the likelihood of it is greatly lessened by the fact that in the late Victorian world that Lovecraft was born into, boys and girls frequently wore dresses throughout their early years until their breeching at an arbitrary age. Dresses on boys, which tend to wane and wax back into fashion over the years, had been on the uprise as Queen Victoria and the rest of the upper class had taken to putting their boys into fancy dresses and sailor suits. In addition, the mass production of cloth diapers had recently revolutionized child rearing just a few years before his birth, and dresses were simply easier to work with when changing diapers. 6 was a common age for breeching, or switching the boy to pants, so Lovecraft was normal in that sense. Still, society was shifting, and Lovecraft grew more uncomfortable with his hair and clothing as he grew older. Dresses for little boys were being phased out and began to be replaced almost entirely by the romper suit when it came into fashion in the early 20th century. So, it wasn't necessarily abnormal for Lovecraft to be wearing a dress in the 1890s, but the fashion was on its way out, and Lovecraft's mother, who had very much wanted a girl, had ensured that Howard had a more feminine look than other boys of his time. Thanks for watching this edition of the Nerdy Sumerian. If you'd like to watch more Nerdy Sumerian episodes or some of my weird music videos, click here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or possibly become a Patreon donor if you want to help me out. Till next time, plague out, y'all.